Hi, my name's Beth and I'm joined by Kyle, who is a final year student. He's also a careers coach and has just scored his graduate job. He's going to be talking to us all about his careers journey today, his university journey, and sharing his tips and tricks on how to secure a graduate role. Kyle, welcome.
Thanks for having me here today.
Thank you for coming. How are you?
I'm good, and yourself?
Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Really excited to be here, thank you.
So what was it that kind of drove you to go to university at kind of like a later stage in life than the traditional student of 18?
As much as I enjoyed my previous roles, I felt trapped beyond a certain point in regard to being able to help them. When you work for a public service, you have a specific remit, and even if you have the capability to help somebody beyond that remit, you are not permitted to do so. That's somebody else's, kind of area. So one of the things that I was very passionate about was children who require actual diagnosis for learning difficulties, and there's a big lack of psychologists who are experienced and trained to diagnose them, and then when they do get the diagnosis, that's the only time that the government can then forward them funding. So they get specialist equipment, learning, teaching, any assistance that's required. But obviously some of these children do have to wait years for a statement, as it used to be called, or an education healthcare plan. And so the idea was to go study psychology and move into the realm of either educational psychology as an actual practitioner, or maybe being in the senior leadership team for an establishment like a college or a university, where I could at least be one of the driving forces behind saying, look, no, I can say in my professional opinion, I've noticed these, we need to get a referral here so we can help this child access the resources they need. So it was, I guess I wanted to study psychology to change roles, but not in a way to get a better job, to get a job where I could specifically help in the way that I would like to.
So not necessarily, because you hear about people going back maybe to university when they're when they've had time doing work or within like the world of work to kind of have a career change, whereas yours is to specialize and to kind of like hone in on those specific areas, which is nice to hear. How do you find it kind of like being as a more mature student at university? How do you navigate that?
I guess like I maybe had expectations starting, because obviously the average age of the students there is much younger, but I was actually quite shocked. There's a lot more mature students in all of the unis than you will expect. I'm 37 and I was by far not the youngest student in my class. There's a really kind of warm, welcoming atmosphere from everyone. I don't really think that age really mattered, and I know that may just sound like a one-off cheesy line, but I never at any point felt like a mature student, apart from the times where I perhaps compared the outside responsibilities I would have as a parent, as a bill payer, having jobs, compared to a student who is maybe still living at home and has the support of mum and dad. So besides those moments where you may be talking to somebody and comparing those differences, in effect, you just feel part of the student body, part of the family. I've made friends of all ages there and we're still in contact. But yeah.
I would like to talk more about kind of your role as a student in the careers team, because I know this is something that more and more universities are doing. It's ensuring that they have representatives from the current student body to be able to speak to students and give careers advice. I feel like in your situation, you are qualified in that sense because you've kind of been through it. You've had jobs, you've had experience. What do you see when you're kind of speaking to students what are the types of students that are coming in to the career centre? What questions are they asking, and kind of what do you kind of give them as advice?
So a lot of the students that are coming in to the career service are usually those who maybe have a very limited or no kind of work history. So, again, and there's I don't mean that in any kind of derogatory terms.
Right? Yeah,
some people have different setups, and by the time they're at uni, they haven't necessarily had the requirement to have a job. But now they're obviously perhaps a bit worried because they know they're going to go into the working world and they're lacking experience. So usually their first question is trying to find, a job that's suitable for what they're studying, and then also that will take their level of experience. And so I would find the most kind of common situation that I find with students who are making inquiries is I usually have the conversation a bit about sometimes you have to take a step back to take two forward. At universities who have high data analytics students or cybersecurity, they are usually very keen to only work in that industry. However, the competition is so high nationally, yet the vacancy numbers are very low in comparison, that usually the best way to kind of get your foot in the door is to take other roles that are still related to information technology, like security, but are not necessarily the exact job that you want. So for starters, usually it's about speaking to them, getting to know what experience they have, and then trying to help them, A, set a realistic, achievable goal in regards to what they're aiming for, and then B, obviously help guide them there.
What would you say kind of the top three common mistakes, or kind of, if you could do some myth busting, like the top three common mistakes on CVs that you see that you're consistently kind of like pointing out to students that maybe they just aren't aware of?
Having the number one mistake is having a generic CV.
Okay.
I always advise that you should have a CV, like you should have a base CV that has all of your experience and all of your, like, the qualities and skills that you've used and all of the achievements. And that will be actually quite overloaded, but you will never send that one. What you do is, when you are going for a particular job, you will then cherry pick the skills from those that you've listed and make a CV that's relevant to that job. A lot of people will accidentally cram too much information by having just a generic CV. If you have tailored ones, so for instance, you have your customer service administrator or a managerial, whichever the job title, you need to be making sure that the CV is actually highlighting skills that the job profile you've read is actually looking for. So the second mistake I would say is, again, it just in general being too long. There are different studies out there, but on average, recruiters spend a couple of minutes reading through CVs. So you do need them to be eye-catching. So again, I do suggest that you make sure your CV is visually nice. You can download nice CV templates, but again, unless you're in the kind of creative world, don't have it too... what's the word? Too glamorous or too artful. It just needs to be appealing, easy to read, with the key points there, and they should be able to read it in a quick time and get a good sense of you. And then thirdly, copying kind of other CVs or what others have said verbatim. You can go on Google now and type in exemplar customer service CV, and you could copy it and swap your name out. But that kind of robotic language, and I say robotic just meaning that there's going to be 15,000 other people who have done that, so your recruiter could have already seen that quite a few many times, and you're just using the exact same sentences as everyone. Their brain literally switches off when they see that. You do want to make sure that you're writing clearly. Use Grammarly, use your checkers and things like that, but make sure that you are writing in a way that reflects how you would communicate, so they actually get a sense for you. And I would say that's more to do with cover notes. A lot of people do actually ignore the fact that job adverts do require a cover letter, and they will just send their CV and hope that happens. So if it does ask for a cover letter, do make sure. And again, the cover letter should be treated the exact kind of same way as the CV. You should never have the same cover letter being sent for 2 different job roles.
100%. I think that was a great piece of advice as well that you said about having kind of a master CV with everything that you have on there. So you can, when it does come to applying for a different role, you can go, right, I know that I've got this. I know that I've got this. And also, which I should be better at, and I think everyone kind of should do it throughout their career, is to keep adding to that master CV all the skills that you're acquiring, because it's easy to forget, like you say.
And one of the good tricks that I always tell people, because some people might find themselves in this situation where they're like, I've actually had quite a few good jobs, but now I'm now searching for a job and I'm struggling to think. Go and search either for your old emails or go and search for the job profile. You know, if you've done a certain job, but you've forgotten the attributes that you used, go onto the website or find a similar job title. Go on there, look up the job and go, oh, yeah, we did do that. It will refresh your brain and it will save you having to think. And then you can use those terminologies and go and write that up. So one trick I always say is, go and search for your old job profiles that were sent to you or any like jobs to save you having to struggle to think about that.
That's great, because like you say, the terminology is there. You don't have to figure out what it means.
And especially depending on certain fields as well, you know, doing it that way, you might notice if they've changed certain terminologies there as well, so you can update that. That's another way that employers will kind of sniff out who's actually been staying up to date with all the relative legislation that affects a particular role. If somebody then throws out an old term, they go, oh, you haven't been around for the last 2 years, because that's gone now. So I would say hunt the job profiles for tips for, you know, reminding yourself, but also just to see if there's been any changes. Yeah,
I think that's great as well. Just kind of keep on top of things. And I said it already, but I love the master CV. I'm like, I should have one of those. I feel like everyone should have a master template so they know going forward. It just saves time as well, right?
Basically, yeah.
What was the recruitment process like for the graduate role?
So the recruitment process, initially it was a written application where you would answer kind of 4 key questions in regards to the types of scenarios and skills that they would be looking for. Then usually there will be a short list of a couple of 100 people kind of put into a group for review. And then what will happen is either an interview day will take place or an online kind of interview will take place. The online ones are very kind of quick and simple. For me personally, they're not preferable, but I understand that they are very efficient, so they're still quite useful. But what will happen is you will click a link and you will be faced with a screen that will kind of shows you, so you can make sure you're centered, and you face the questions that you would normally face in an interview, except the computer is asking you, and then you record your answer, and then those are all saved and then sent back to, you know, HR, who then review them and come up with their list of finalists. If you don't do the online version, what will happen is you'll be called into an assessment day. You'll obviously meet some staff wherever you're based, and then you will go through usually a group task like this, usually an introduction. Then you'll be paired off into groups to do like kind of a group task to see how you work as a team, to see what leadership skills, to see your listening skills, and you are monitored usually by previous graduates who have gone through the same process, so they know what to look for, because they obviously remember what they brought the year before. And then on top of that, you will do a personal presentation. For instance, the one I did, the question that was posed to you was, which law would you change and why? And so you had to give a 7-minute presentation on that and try to, again, obviously come across as having the attributes and understanding the significant issues to them that they would expect somebody on, management level to be aware of and to highlight. And then finally, you will have just a personal interview where the kind of regular job questions are fired at you. But I would say that usually these access days, they're very welcoming. They do icebreakers, they warm you into it, and it's a very well organised kind of system. For me, it's preferable to do the face-to-face. I'm a people person, so I like talking, but yeah, it's a very streamlined process, because even though they do receive hundreds of applications, usually each local authority will whittle down about 240 applications to about 8 finalists.
Wow.
And then those will be the people who are either come in person or who will receive a video link.
What kind of, if any, exercises do you do after an interview, whether it's, I know you don't find out kind of instantly, but like, how do you learn from them? You said it was kind of a good learning curve for you. So what do you do to kind of use that experience to kind of make you better?
After the interview, straight away, I will kind of jot down like my immediate impressions, because if you've had a bad interview, you normally come out and you, I wish I said this, I wish I've said that. Write that down while it's fresh in your mind, because 2 hours later you might forget it, or the stress might have slightly changed the wording. Try and write down the initial feedback from yourself, how you feel, what you wish you had changed, where you felt you'd messed up, just so you remember it while it's fresh. Even though it can be scary, especially if we don't hear from them, do call back the interviewer. And, even if you haven't had a successful call, ask them, what would, improve my answer. Ask them, was there a particular answer that let me down, or was there something I wasn't conveying? And you'll usually find that they're very open to giving you feedback, and it will usually be quite useful. Again, it can be a bit daunting ringing somebody up to hear about something that you've, perhaps done wrong. But the fact is, it's happened already. So you might as well use it to your advantage, especially if you are going to keep trying for another role.
What would you say like the core differences are between being a traditional student, so one who's kind of 18, 19, straight out of school, versus a mature student like yourself?
I would say one of the things that was a common occurrence, like talking to other mature students, because there were quite a lot of mature students in my school, and I would say that quite a lot of us were parents. And there's this kind of internal conflict, because besides doing the lessons and you're working and you're taking care of them, you then sometimes are pulling yourself away to study, or even days where you're not studying, you haven't got work, you haven't got lessons, but you are you're mentally depleted. And you come across this situation where you feel like you're not holding your home life down in the correct order. So you maybe not you've not spent enough time with the kids, and there can be a bit of emotional guilt because you're saying, no, sorry, I can't do this, or you're saying no to lots of social requests, or you can't maybe help a family member out as much. There is going to be a demand on your time, and being that you are a mature student, so more than likely you have responsibilities and probably don't have somebody supporting you with your studies or financially, so you're doing everything, you will have to make sacrifices and choices, and sometimes you may feel that you're letting other people down, but you need to dedicate that time to study. And what I would say is one of the hard things as a mature student is just remembering the long term, is remembering that, right, I want to go and spend the day with my son at the beach today, but I have an assignment due, and I have to do it today, deadlines, da 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 da. And so I do feel bad that I can't take him, he's even asked, but you have to remember what you're doing this for. Because for a lot of people, they're studying to get their dream job. And when they say dream job, even though it may sound very materialistic, they mean having enough money so that they can provide the safety and all of the experiences that they want their family to have. But in the meantime, they are stuck with the nitty-gritty reality that for the moment they're going to have to sacrifice a bit of fun, a bit of socialising in order to get work done. So I would say making sure that they have a work-life balance is one of the challenges.
What is one piece of advice you would give to a mature student like yourself who is going through this kind of end of their university experience, or even starting? What is just like one piece of advice that you think would be invaluable to their experience?
A friend, my best friend, who actually was the person who inspired me to go back to university, he called me up once when I'd finished quite a lot of coursework, and because he wanted to ask me what was I doing to celebrate, and I was like, oh, I'm just at home watching Netflix. And he basically told me off and was like, no, you have to celebrate those little achievements. And he really went into it, and it was a good piece of advice, because these courses are 3, sometimes 4 years long. You know, if you go the master's route, even longer. And so it's a long haul. And if you just wait until the degree to feel like you've accomplished something, you're doing yourself an injustice, because you're actually ignoring all of those small steps that you're taking. Each past test, each bit of coursework, each module you've managed to kind of master and get the hang of, you're not recognizing that, and you're kind of putting the goalpost really, really far away. It's almost like saying, I'm not going to be happy until I've done this. It can have that effect on you. So I would say a key bit of advice is celebrate the little victories that lead to the eventual win, in order to keep yourself motivated, because you can just feel like you're lost in this sea of work. But by having these little kind of periodic celebrations, it helps to break your academic year into manageable chunks. And then you're actively reminding yourself, because sometimes you do need to remind yourself what you've managed to do to get here.
I think that's a great piece of advice, especially like you say, when it's someone in your position where you have so many other hats that you're wearing, you need to have that time for yourself as well, to remember what you're doing. I love that. And I think it's something that people should apply throughout life. Yeah. Like, that's one piece of advice to maintain going forward. And then finally, if you were to give one piece of advice to all of those students, I know that we can't generalize them because the student body is so diverse, but for someone who is perhaps at the start of their career journey, who might be coming up to graduating or even in their first year of university, what's one piece of advice that you would give to them?
Again, it sounds very stereotypical, but follow your passion and your interests. The success and the money can come later. I have spoken to a lot of students in the past who, when you ask them why they like a certain field, they reference salary, but there's a lot of hard work to get there. And even when you get the job, you're going to be expected to work very hard. And so doing something that you actually love just makes it so much easier to learn the materials that you need to learn, so much easier to put it in place, and you're actually going to be happy. It's the old saying, if you get a job that you love, you don't work a day in your life. And I believe that old sayings stand the test of time for a reason, because they're true.
Yeah, great piece of advice. Thank you so much for coming in. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And best of luck at graduation and when the new role kicks in.
Thank you.